Welcome to Storytime with Nanny, and this is day 25. I didn't realize till after we'd already read Tilly Turtle yesterday that that was actually written. It had another author out in the index there. It's Thelma Johnson. And then Something Interesting was written by Natalie Worden. And then Jerry Learns to Work was adapted by Monroe's Third Reader. And that was all out of the bridge book that we read yesterday. And I did not read a story I meant to read out of the bridge book, which is an Rebecca book yesterday, called The Busy Brownie. And it is written by Thelma Johnson as well. Benjamin Blake had a brownie. The brownie stayed at his house for one whole day. Now, Benjamin Blake never saw the brownie, but he knew there was a brownie. Benjamin Blake knew because he found so many cookies. Big cookies, munchy cookies, small, round, crunchy cookies. And Benjamin Blake does like cookies. All cookies. "It's time to get up," called Granny as she shook Benjamin Blake. Benjamin Blake sat up and yawned. Then he hopped right out of bed. "Thank you, Granny," said Benjamin Blake. Excuse me. "Thank you, Granny," said Benjamin Blake, "for helping me make my bed smooth and neat." When Benjamin Blake sat down to eat, he found one round, crunchy cookie beside his plate. Benjamin Blake sang, "I have a brownie, a busy brownie. I have a busy little cookie brownie." While Granny packed his lunch for school, Benjamin Blake brought in the morning paper. He found two big munchy cookies on the table. Benjamin Blake packed them in his lunch and sang, "I like my brownie, my busy brownie. I like my busy little cookie brownie." Benjamin Blake hurried home from school. On the table he found one big munchy cookie, two round crunchy cookies, and a tall glass of milk. Then Benjamin Blake saw Granny. She was busy baking cookies. Granny asked Benjamin Blake, "Did you teach my brownie how to bake cookies?" "My brownie's cookies look just like yours." Granny just smiled and kept right on baking cookies. "You are my brownie," cried Benjamin Blake. "You are my cookie brownie." Benjamin Blake gave Granny a great big hug. "Oh, Granny," exclaimed Benjamin Blake, "I'm so glad you came to visit us." Then Benjamin Blake sang, "Thank you, Granny, my busy Granny. Thank you, busy little cookie Granny." I thought that was a cute story, and I thought it was neat that Grandma was able to go visit him. I know that had to have been a fun time. Now, we started reading in the book yesterday, Strong and True, the Rebecca book by Laurel Hicks and illustrated by Walter Kerr. There are some other stories that other people have written. I'm trying to, oh yes, I remember. We did finish up yesterday with the selfish dog in the manger. Remember how mean he was to all the barnyard animals that just wanted to eat their dinner? And he ended up not having any friends, didn't he? Now this story is called The Way to Be Happy. And it's just listed as an old tale, so they don't know where it originated from. And the word in here that we're going to go over before we start reading, so you'll know what it means when we get to it, is envy. And that means wanting something that belongs to someone else. And we're not supposed to be envious of others, are we? Now, the story, The Way to Be Happy. A very long time ago, there was a king whose name was Henry. He lived in a fine house, and he had many servants to wait upon him. He had fine clothes, beautiful horses, strong boxes full of gold, and many ships that sailed upon the sea. He had everything that anyone could wish for, and yet he was not happy. In the same country there was a poor miller who had a little mill close by the river Dee. Dee was the name of the river. This miller, and that means somebody that like grinds the wheat. Remember how we read about the little red hen, and she'd take the grain to the miller because he would grind the wheat so she could make bread out of it. So the miller was busy every hour of the day. He was as happy as he was busy. People who lived near the mill heard him singing all the time, from morning till night. When anyone asked him why he was so happy, he said, "I have all that I need, and I do not wish for more." One day the king was in great trouble. "Tell me," he said, "if there is one happy man in all this land." His friends said, "We have heard that there is one such man. He is a miller, and he lives by the river Dee." "I must see the miller of the Dee," said the king. "I will learn from him how to be happy." The very next day King Henry rode down to the river Dee. He stopped his horse at the door of the little mill. He could hear the miller singing at his work, "I envy nobody, no, not I, and nobody envies me." The king went into the mill. He said to the miller, "You are wrong, my friend, for I envy you. I would give all that I have if I could be as happy as you." The miller said, "I will help you to be happy if I can." "Tell me then," said the king, "why is it that you can sing this song in your little mill on the Dee, while I who am king of all the land, am sad every day of my life?" The miller smiled and said, "This is why I am happy in my little mill. I trust in God each day. I work and earn my food. I love my wife and children, and I love my friends. I owe no man, and the good river Dee turns the mill that grinds the corn to feed my family and me." The king turned sadly away. "Goodbye, my friend," he said. "Be happy while you may. I would rather be the miller of the Dee than king of all this land." "So would I," said the happy miller. Why was the miller happy? It was because he trusted in God. He had good friends. He owed no man, and he did not wish for things which he could not have. Why was the king not happy? He knew that men did not love him, and he was never content with what he had. He did not have God's love in his heart. Do you think he would have been happy if the miller had given him his mill? He had everything else, didn't he? That things aren't going to make us happy. We need to decide we're going to be happy with what we have. And this little poem is written by Robert Louis Stevenson. "Think of This" is the name of it. "The world is so full of a number of things. I'm sure we should all be as happy as kings." We do need things. We need a place to live, and food and clothes, and heat when it's cold, and cool air when it's hot. We do need water and air to breathe. We need things. But as far as material things, they're not going to make us happy. We have to be happy within ourselves. Now, this next story is by General Robert E. Lee, and he was a soldier. And it's going to have the word in it, distress. And distress means being worried or unhappy. And it's called Lee and the Bird. And I wanted to go ahead. It's written by Catherine T. Bryce. One day, General Robert E. Lee was on a battlefield. The big guns were booming all around. His men said, "You must not stay here, General Lee. You may be killed." "What would we do without our leader?" "Go away, go away." General Lee turned to go. Suddenly he stopped and looked down. A mother bird was flying around. She flew to the ground. Then she flew to a tree near General Lee. And then she flew back again to the same place on the ground. All the time she was calling and calling, "Chee-chee, chee-chee." General Lee looked up in the tree. He saw a little nest. Then he looked down on the ground. There lay a little baby bird. Now he knew what was bothering the mother bird. The little one had fallen out of the nest in the tree. It was too young to fly back. It lay there on the ground and called to its mother. The poor little mother could not take it back to the nest. She would not leave it, so she stayed there among the soldiers with the big guns booming all around her. She kept on flying from the nest to the baby bird, from the bird to the nest, calling and calling in distress, "Chee, chee, chee." Again the men said to their general, "You must go, General Lee. We will not fight until you are safe." But the great general would not leave that mother bird in distress. He stopped down and picked up the baby bird. He put it back into its nest and saw the little mother fly to it. Then he went away. So, he was like the commander in the army, and they're having a battle and they want him to leave because he's to give the orders for the men to fight. And he didn't need to be in the middle of the battle, but they wouldn't leave. So that goes to tell me, even though he might not be on everyone's side during a big war, he still had some goodness in his heart, didn't he? He still cared about the baby bird because the mama cared about the baby bird, and she couldn't help her own baby, but he could help. But we're not supposed to go around handling baby birds. And we have had to nurse a couple. My daughter has until they got older to fly away. But for the most part, we're just not supposed to just touch them directly with our hands if we're trying to get them back to the nest for the mom to take care of. We need to put something on our hands, some gloves or something, so that if that were to be something we ever had to do, was to handle a baby bird, because if the mom smells, and they will smell our hands on the baby, then they won't take care of the baby anymore, because the baby doesn't smell like their baby, it smells like us. So, that was just a little side note there. This is a poem that we're going to read next called Kind Words, and it's written by Henry W. Longfellow. Kind hearts are the gardens, kind thoughts are the roots, kind words are the flowers, kind deeds are the fruits. Take care of the gardens and keep them from weeds. Fill them with flowers, kind words and kind deeds. It means we're supposed to be kind to others. This next story, I thought it was a good story. Made me a little sad, but it has a happy ending. Ivan's goat, and oh my, the name that originally wrote this is something I'm going to have to spell. Bjornstjerne is the first name. The last name is Bjornson, Jorson. It's retold by Catherine T. Bryce. Ivan's goat. Ivan had no toys and no one to play with him, but he had one pet that he loved dearly. It was a little goat. Ivan kept the goat in a safe place where the fox could not get it. He pulled grass and leaves for it to eat. One day the goat ran away. It was gone when Ivan came out to feed it. He thought at once of the fox. Suppose it had caught his dear little goat. He ran about looking for his pet and calling, "Goatie, goatie." "Bah," said the goat at last. There it was on the hill, looking down. There beside the goat was a little girl. "Is this your goat?" she asked. He opened his mouth and eyes and looked at her. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Merritt," she answered. "I am Mother's baby. I am Father's mouse. I am little fairy in Grandfather's house." Ivan stood there and looked at the little girl. "Is this your goat?" she asked again. "Yes," he said. "I like this goat so much. Will you give it to me?" she asked. "No, no. I like it too. I can't give away my little goat." Merritt put her arms around the goat. She looked at him and said, "If I give you a good cake, may I have the goat?" Now, Ivan was very poor. They did not have good things to eat at his home. The only time he had ever tasted cake was once when his grandfather came to see them. He looked up at Merritt. "Let me see the cake," he said. "Here it is," she said, and threw it down to him. "Oh, it is broken," he said. He picked up every piece of it, and then he tasted one little piece. It was so good that he tasted another little piece. Before he thought what he was doing, he had eaten all the cake. "Now the goat belongs to me," said Merritt. "Oh, no, you can't have my little goat." Merritt laughed and jumped up. "Yes, yes, the goat is mine," she said. I said I would give you my cake for the goat. You have eaten the cake. Now the goat is mine, mine, mine. Merritt put a strong arm around the goat's neck and tried to lead it away. At first it would not go with her. It stretched its neck down to Ivan. Bah, it said. Merritt caught hold of its hair with one hand and pulled it at the string with the other hand. Come, goaty dear, she said. You shall stay in the house and eat out of Mother's nice dish. Then she ran away with the goat. Ivan was left alone. Oh, how unhappy he was. He loved his little goat so dearly. It was the only little friend he had ever had to play with. Now he had lost it. His mother had been out at work. On her way home she saw him. He was sitting at the foot of the hill crying. Ivan, Ivan, she said, why are you crying? Oh, my goat, my little goat, he cried. Where is the goat? Asked his mother, looking around. It is gone. It will never come back. What has happened? She asked. Where is the little goat? Oh, I sold it. I sold it for a cake. Ivan, how could you do that? Asked his mother. Sold your goat for a cake? Oh, what do you suppose the little goat thinks of you? Now Ivan saw how wrong and foolish he had been. He was sure that he never could be happy again as long as he lived. He cried himself to sleep and dreamed he saw his little goat. It was far off where he could not get it. Just as he was dreaming this, something touched him on the ear and waked him. He started up and looked around. There was the goat. Oh, you've come back, said Ivan. He jumped up and took hold of the goat's front legs and danced for joy. He was just going to take the goat home when someone called him. He turned and looked. There was Merritt. Then Ivan was sad again. Oh, it is her goat now, not mine, he said to himself. He stood still and looked at Merritt. At last he said, have you come back here for your goat? Merritt said, it is not my goat, it is yours. Grandfather says it is not right for me to keep him. You may play with it, said Ivan. Will you play with Goaty and me? So Merritt and Ivan played together and became good friends. Well, I'm glad that Merritt's granddad made her give the goat back, aren't you? Because Ivan did do something foolish. He shouldn't have gave the goat away, not even for cake. But he got the goat back, and then he got a new friend. And then Merritt got to come and see the goat and play with the goat, and she made a new friend. So it all worked out good, didn't it? I like this next story. It's called The Raindrops. Let's see. It's just a fable. Doesn't have a name. There was once a farmer who had a large field. He had spent much time plowing his field and planting it with corn. As the little corn plants began to grow, he worked each day to keep the weeds out. The farmer was depending on that corn to provide food and money for his family. But something was wrong. It had not rained for weeks, and the little corn plants were beginning to dry up and turn brown. The farmer knew that he would lose his whole crop if rain did not come soon, but there was nothing that he could do to bring the rain. One day, as he stood looking at the blue sky and wishing for rain, 2 little raindrops up in the clouds over his head saw him. Look at that farmer, said one. I feel sorry for him. He has worked so hard in his field, and now his corn is all drying up. I wish I could do him some good. Yes, said the other, but you are only a little raindrop. What can you do? Why, you could not even wet one corn stalk. Well, said the first, I know that I am too small to do much, but at least I can cheer the farmer up a little. And I do want to always do my best. The least I can do is try. I'm going to go down to the field. Goodbye. Down went the first drop of rain, and the second drop decided to follow. One came splashing on the farmer's nose, the other fell on the stalk of corn. Dear me, said the farmer, putting his finger to his nose. What is that, a raindrop? I do believe it's going to rain. The first 2 raindrops had no sooner started for the field than a third said, well, if they're going, I think I will too. Here I come. And down came that raindrop on another stalk of corn. By this time, thousands of raindrops had gathered together to hear what their friends were talking about. When they saw that the first 3 had gone to help and cheer the farmer, another drop said, I want to help too. And down he came. me too, the others cried, and soon it was raining hard, and the corn was watered. It now grew and ripened, all because the first little raindrop had decided to do its best and be a help. For he who always does his best will better grow, but he who shrieks or slights his task, he lets the better go. He did his best, didn't he? And then all his raindrop friends came and helped. So I think it'd be fun to, next time I get caught out in the rain and feel the first raindrop hit, to think about this story. Now this next story is called The First Thanksgiving, and it's written by Laurel Hicks. Long ago, the Pilgrims lived in England. They loved God and they loved the Bible. They wanted to do what they felt was right. The King of England said that everyone had to go to his type of church, and the Pilgrims thought that God wanted them to go to a different church, and they felt like they should obey God. The Pilgrims would not go to the King's church. They had their own church. They preached to the people. They told the people that Jesus died for them. Finally, the Pilgrims said, we must find a new country. We must find a good land where we may worship God in the right way. We must find a land that is free. The Pilgrims went here and there, but they did not find a land that was free. At last, someone said, let's go to America. America is a beautiful new country. In America, we can worship God in the Bible the way we feel we should. And so the Pilgrims went to America. They sailed for months on their little ship, the Mayflower. Finally, they arrived in the beautiful new country. America was covered with woods in those days. The woods were full of Indians and wild animals. It was winter when the Pilgrims came. They had cut down trees to build houses, but they could not make the houses warm enough to keep out the cold and the snow. They had very little food. Many of the Pilgrims became sick. Many died. Still they trusted God. They said, God will help us, and God did. Spring came, and some good Indians came to see the Pilgrims. The Indians showed the Pilgrim children where to find good wild berries, because there's berries we shouldn't eat that are poisonous. And the Indian fathers showed the Pilgrim fathers the best places to catch fish. The Pilgrims had plenty of food that summer. Then it was autumn. Some people call it fall. The corn was tall and ripe. Pumpkins and squashes were growing. The Pilgrim fathers found wild turkeys in the woods. The happy Pilgrims said, let's have a big feast. Let us give thanks to God for our food. Let us thank Him for America, our beautiful new country, and let's invite the Indians, the Pilgrims said. We can share our food with them. The thankful Pilgrims worked for days to get the feast ready. Then the big day came. For 3 days, the Pilgrims and the Indians feasted and played games. But most of all, they thanked God for His wonderful goodness to them. And that was our first Thanksgiving. And then it says more about the Pilgrims. And that's also written by Laurel Hicks. Why did the Pilgrims come to America? They came so they could worship God in the way they felt was right. And they came so they could tell people that they needed Jesus in their hearts. They came so they could preach God's word without being put into prison. They came to start a new country in which people could be free to do what they felt was right. What did the Pilgrims bring to America? The Pilgrims brought God to America. They loved God, and they had God in their hearts. More than anything else, they wanted to serve God. The Pilgrims brought the Bible to America too, which is God's Word. They did not just carry their Bibles around with them. They read the Bible, and they believed the Bible. They started our country on the teachings of the Bible. They believed that God's Word is the most important book in the world. The Pilgrims also brought themselves to America. They brought their whole selves. They loved the new country they were starting, and they put their whole lives into making it a good country. They did not just work for their country when they felt like it. They kept right on working even when hard times came. They loved our country so much that some of them even died for it. The Pilgrims were not perfect men. They sometimes did wrong and made mistakes just as we all do, but they were men who believed God. They were men who obeyed the Bible. They were men who always did their best to make our country great. So aren't you glad that they came? because it is pretty awesome country. This next story is it's a rather short story, but it's called The Milkmaid, and it's another Aesop fable. Once upon a time, a girl was walking along with a pail of milk. She sang a happy song, for she was thinking of the money she would get when she sold her milk. Then she said to herself, I have 2 gallons of milk, which I shall sell. With the money I shall buy 50 eggs. I shall put these under some of my hens. The hens will keep them warm until little chickens are hatched. I shall give these chickens plenty of good food and clean water. They will grow fat, and by Christmas they will be large enough to sell. I can get enough money for them to buy a fine new dress. She was thinking so much about her new dress that she forgot to be careful. Her foot struck a stone, and she tried to keep from falling. The pail flew out of her hands, and the milk was spilled. So maybe the moral of that story should be she should have been thinking about what she was doing, the tasks she had at hand, and not be thinking about the money she was going to end up making. You think maybe when we do something, when we do our job, we should be thinking about what we're doing. We may run a little over today, but I think we have time for one more, even if we, well, actually it'll be the last story in this book, but we'll go ahead and finish it. It's called Ben Franklin and the Ants, and I'm looking to see, it was Edward Eggleston that wrote this. Few people ever knew as many things as Benjamin Franklin. Men said, how did he ever learn so much? For he had been a poor boy who had to work for a living. He could not go to school at all after he was 10 years old. His father made soap and candles. Little Ben had to cut wicks for the candles. He also had to fill the candle modes, sold soap and candles, and ran errands. Busy. But when he was not at work, he spent his time reading good books. He read the old story of Pilgrim's Progress and liked it so well that he bought all the other stories by the same man. Another way that he had of learning was by seeing things with his own eyes. His father took him to see carpenters at work with their saws and planes. Sorry, I don't know where. With their saws and plans. He also saw masons laying bricks. He went to see men make the round legs of chairs. Since Ben liked books so well, his father thought that it would be a good plan to send him to learn to print them. So the boy went to work in his brother's printing office. He worked hard, and whenever he had some time off, he would read. Long before he was a man, people said how much that Ben knows. This was because he did not waste his time. He read good books. He worked hard at all his jobs. He found out things for himself. One thing that Ben wanted to find out about was how ants tell things to one another. He knew they could not talk as we do, but he thought they must have a sign language. He noticed that when an ant has found a dead fly too big for him to drag away, he will run off and get another ant to help him. Ben thought that ants must have some way of telling other ants that there is work to do. One day he found some ants eating molasses out of a little jar in a closet. He took them out. Then he tied a string to the jar and hung it on a nail in the ceiling. One little ant liked sweet things so well that he stayed in the jar and kept on eating like a greedy boy. At last, when this greedy ant had eaten all that he could, he started to go home. Ben saw him climb over the rim of the jar. Then the ant ran down the outside of the jar, but when he got to the bottom, he did not find any shelf there. He went all around the jar. There was no way to get down to the floor. The ant ran this way and that way, but he could not get down. At last, the greedy ant thought he would see if he could go up. He climbed up the string to the ceiling. Then he went down the wall. At last, he came to his own home. After a while, he got hungry again. He thought about that jar of sweets at the end of a string. Then he told the other ants. And about half an hour after the ant had gone up the string, Ben saw some ants going down the string. They marched in a line, one after another. Soon there were 2 lines of ants on the string. Then Ben Franklin knew that the greedy ant had told the other ants about the jar. He had not told them with his mouth. He had told them by making signs with his feelers, the little antennas on his head. If you watch ants the way Ben Franklin did, you can see them talking with their feelers too. Do you know who taught them to talk that way? God did, didn't he? Just like God taught the birds how to make a nest. So God can talk to us and be with us too. And I hope he lives in each of your hearts. And I plan on seeing you next time on Storytime with Nanny. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you next time. And I hope you have a great, blessed day.